Today I'm going to show you exactly what is happening in the brain of someone who believes that they can do anything that they want to anyone on the other side of the political aisle with zero consequences. Before we go any further, if you believe that there is a much more difficult time for conservative students on college campuses than liberal students, put it in the comment section. There are several different reasons psychologically about why this happens. One is that there's what's called a monoculture in higher education. More specifically, it's called a political monoculture, and it pushes what's called social validation. And this means that the faculty and the student population in most higher education leans heavily liberal. And this provides a level of what's called impunity to anyone that does anything to people that are conservative or show a conservative viewpoint. Impunity means freedom from punishment, harm, or negative consequences for wrongdoing, allowing individuals or groups to act without fear of penalty. Some of the lack of consequences come because people believe that are in the hierarchy of the faculty that any complaints by a conservative group or a conservative student are part of a larger coordinated political strategy. And because of this, they believe that their actions are completely justified. They believe that these disruptions are perfectly okay because they believe that the conservative group's message is propaganda, intellectually dishonest, or even harmful. Therefore, they view that their disruptive actions are a justified form of protest instead of an unjust act that requires any punishment. Some students and faculty even believe that it's perfectly okay to shout down or completely block people from expressing a different point of view. Why do they do this? Because they find other points of view offensive.
How dare you!
So you have a perceived lack of consequences, which is actually accurate. You have a political monoculture. You have social validation. You have a perception of violent actions being justified, and a position that free speech, when it comes from someone who disagrees with you, is violence and it is harmful and it needs to be stopped. So are there ever any actual disciplinary actions that are taken? Sure there are, especially when things go viral or when they create public backlash. Primarily, Americans vote with their checkbook. They vote with their money. They vote with their feet. When attendance looks like it's going to go down, or when contributions begin to dry up, or when public perception on a larger scale looks as though there's a problem with bias on the campus, then people begin to take notice. One of the things that you have to come to grips with is that if you tend to lean conservative like me, you have to understand that there's always going to be pushback from the status quo, and you're always going to run the risk of being shouted down or being called all those fun names that they like to use. Why does this happen? Because typically there are no consequences, and from their perspective, they believe they're fighting against views that they consider to be harmful, discriminatory, or even a threat to other people's safety. And this creates what's called a culture of victimhood. And this means that their belief in what they perceive as a higher moral purpose means that standard rules about civil discourse don't apply to them. And they believe that their actions are a legitimate form of protest against what they think is a perceived injustice. Unfortunately, one of the results of this is a complete misunderstanding of the freedom of speech laws. They believe that free speech also includes disruptive behavior. However, the First Amendment and even universities' free expression policies generally protect the expression of ideas, not the conduct themselves that break other laws. So in essence, the combination of social validation, moral conviction, and perceived leniency contributes to the belief in some individuals that they can engage in destructive actions without facing any kind of consequences. If you think this has finally went too far with the leniency of this type of activity on campuses, put it in the comment section.